Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Eric Cruz. You can check him out at cruzandco.com. Eric, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. This is part of the top EO member series. I've had quite a bit of EO companies on. Actually, Eric and his company work with a lot of EO companies as well. Mark Beelan talked about driving digital dominance, and he runs, he's in EO Chicago, runs Search Lab Digital. I had Craig Swanson of EO Seattle. He talked about building businesses and meaningful partnerships. He was the co-founder of Creative Live. And Robert Hartline of EO Nashville was another one. He built up Absolute Wireless he started from scratch and built it to over $100 million. And it was a pretty incredible journey that he shared. That and many more on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise25. At Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast, and we do the accountability, the strategy, and the full execution. So, Eric, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background to make it look easy for the company so they can create amazing content, create amazing relationships, most importantly, run their business. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships, and I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships, and I have found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and the companies I most admire and share with the planet what they're working on. So if you thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. Eric also has some amazing content on his website, which we'll check out. I'm excited to introduce Eric Cruz, as founder and CEO of Cruz & Co. Eric has guided over 100 organizations to increased and sustainable profitability while optimizing their operations and also instituting an elevated quality of life for their leadership teams, which is super important. He's been building on decades of successful entrepreneurship, 8 years as a certified EOS Implementer with over 1,000 sessions. And Eric led Cruz & Co.'s 2021 launch of the Growth Method, which we'll talk about. It's a proprietary business operating system designed to propel companies to increase revenue, profit, and salable value. And Eric is also the co-founder and CEO of CE Painting, one of the largest commercial painting businesses in New England. Eric, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate you having me.
I'm excited to dig in because I've been consuming your content online. I figured just start us off and talk about Cruz & Co. and what you do. I'm going to pull up your site as you do it.
Awesome. So Cruz & Co. is a management consulting company that focuses specifically on small and medium-sized businesses. We're like consulting for the rest of us. We're the Deloitte for small and medium-sized companies. Ultimately, when a company brings us in, they're trying to align the company from top to bottom on the right priorities that are going to drive what we call RPV, which is revenue, profit, and valuation. So we get hired by a small and medium-sized company. They're trying to take this vision where they're trying to go, and they're trying to figure out, what do I need to be doing to achieve that vision? And then how do I align my company from the senior team throughout the entire company on what those priorities are and how to get them to do it? Now, then we also have all the resources they need. We have a finance company. We have a marketing company. We have an operations component of our business as well. So we have all the resources they need along the journey, but ultimately we're trying to drive RPV in every company we work with.
Eric, I find that to be unique when I hear a company that you actually have pieces that the companies, you'll help like with the finance and other things. Talk about that decision, because that's also a lot of work, right? Like you could help them with the strategy and everything they need to do, but you're also behind the scenes doing some of the stuff too.
Yeah, so you're asking, it's a really insightful question I don't get very often, actually. So we're kind of like the anti-consultant company, honestly. we're a consulting company. It's what we do. We're going to help you grow. We're help you figure out the priorities. But we really are designed for small and medium-sized companies under 1,000 employees. Some of our companies are quite large we work with. But what I found after being an entrepreneur for so many years is you can set these priorities as a company. You can align to the priorities you have as a company, but then you can go out and hire resources to help you achieve some of these things that you need to get done. And you just get bamboozled, for lack of a better word. You get vendors who sell you a bill of goods. They charge you a fortune. Marketing companies that will charge you X amount of dollars per month, and then you won't get any ROI. Finance companies that don't know how to speak the language of a CEO, a small CEO, or recruiting resources that aren't set up properly for you, or whatever the case might be. So ultimately, we built all these different parts of our company specifically with the small business person in mind, because when we were working with these teams to figure out what they needed to do, we'd find they'd go out and try to get things done, and they'd hire these resources, which would set them back 6 months. So we created boutique resources that we think are designed to, that we know have been proven to help our companies in these specific areas. So we have an M&A function that's set up just for small and medium-sized companies. We have search functions that are the same, and a finance company that's designed to speak to CEOs and leadership teams using words they can they can understand. But we're also giving them the top cream of the crop resources. We're just putting them together in a way that they can afford and process. So that's our goal. And it's not easy. It has not been easy to do. But after being an entrepreneur for 20 years, I just got sick of hearing so many people say they're going to help me and then spending a fortune and then not being able to get results from what I was being sold.
Yeah. Do you remember that time? Because obviously you have the growth method, which you've developed over decades, right? But then do you remember that moment where someone's like, hey, we're struggling finding, I don't know, what the finance or the operations, and you're like, okay, we'll just do it for you, because, that's a big decision, right? Because you have a certain focus. What was one of those times when you're like, let's do it for you and make it easy?
So here's what happens a lot to us. So for us, one of our most important things we're focusing on when we're helping a company scale is not just a one-year plan or quarterly priorities or OKRs. We use OKRs, objectives and key results, to set priorities. With a small business in particular, we find that they don't focus enough on dialing in the 3-year vision of the company and even converting it into like a mini business plan. Now, not going crazy. You don't need to hire Deloitte to do this stuff. But to the degree that you're going to scale your company is way beyond 1 year. It's usually needing a vision that's pretty clear in terms of how you're going to get to where you're going in 3 years. To that end, I like our companies to link that to their finances. So if they say that right now they're a $7 million company and they're going to grow to $14 million, I want to have them map that out. What does that look like for this year financially? What does that look like for the next 2 years beyond that? What do I need to have for cash flow for investment? What exactly am I investing in specifically? And what's the ROI need to be? And is my plan just crap, honestly? I've spent so much time creating my own plans that were junk, honestly, that I finally just said, I'm not going to work with a company anymore where they say they're going to double the company without having the financial plan and the backdrop to say it's actually going to work. And what we found is that financial planning, 3 year and 1 year and quarter, actually then drives all the decision making in the company. And without that, you end up just setting a bunch of priorities that you really can't figure out if you're getting ROI on those things or not. So we think it all links. And I had to build a finance function because I would send people to other firms and I wouldn't be able to get the results I needed for them to help them as a company. So we just built it ourselves. It took us years to build this engine, honestly. But now we have a team of, I think, 16 or 18 people inside the finance company, 4 or 5 CFOs, bookkeepers, controllers. And if we have an issue we have with a client or client wants to really translate that vision into a financial reality, we can get that done pretty quickly.
I'm looking here at the page here, right? We're in the Cruising Co. We're on the finance page here, and you could see kind of the executive coaching, operations, human resources, contingency, and everything else. What are some of the biggest mistakes people make with this when they're thinking of their financial engine?
So, so it's interesting you're keying on finance. Fractional finance is one of the fastest growing spaces that exist in the business world, which is kind of funny. We kind of stumbled into it. We weren't trying to grow a big finance company. We were trying to help our clients. But we have plenty of companies that we work with that are just finance clients also. They're not clients of our growth method or of our consulting team. So what issues do I see that people making? One, because unless a CEO or a senior leadership team has strong financial background of some kind, they will put people in roles that have titles and think that they're going to deliver because they have a certain title. So they'll put somebody in a controller role who really is more of a bookkeeper. They'll put people in a CFO role who really is more of a controller. And ultimately, you have over-reliance on people and numbers and delegating to people that really can't drive the business financially. So sometimes a CFO will be there, and a CFO's job is to tell you where to take the business financially, and they will not actually have the basics covered. Sometimes I'll see a controller who people love. I have a phenomenal controller. I absolutely love my controller, but he's not a CFO. He won't tell me where to go. He will tell me how things look, and he's very good at that. And people don't understand the differences between bookkeepers, controllers, CFOs. And without knowing that information, you think you have a resource that's guiding you. And then we go in there and I say, you're not where you think you are, and you don't have a plan to get to where you want to go. And then we have to figure out what that combination you need is. And usually it's a combination. It's usually a combination of controller and CFO and bookkeeping, honestly. And knowing the mix that's required based on where you are is crucial.
Yeah, as you were saying, controller is like how things look. CFO is
where do I need to
where
go?
where I need to go. What do you look for in a good CFO?
So first of all, hiring is difficult as a whole. So we built a hiring engine. We also have hiring partners we work with for C-suite positions, but we hire a lot of people ourselves also. We have an internal recruiting engine. Hiring is an art. So if us or one of our partners is hiring for a CFO in particular, first we're trying to look at the story. I recommend this for anybody. Does the story of them being a CFO actually make sense? Are they actually even a CFO? That's one thing we get. Some people build themselves as CFOs when they're really not. So we look at what did they achieve in their previous background? What companies have they driven to success? Who was around them on the leadership team and the companies they were previously? Were they a financial reporting element of that team, or were they a financial driving element of that team? So if for a CFO, we really want more of the person that can kind of tell us how to build the clock, to use a Jim Collins analogy, rather than tell us what time it is. And we're going to be looking to see how much of that they've done in the past. For controller, we're going to index more on accuracy of the books. Are the books accurate? Are they telling us what we need to know, at least accurately from a number standpoint? And from a bookkeeper, it's just are the magic elves, as you would say, are they actually working in the background to get the numbers in the right spot?
At what level have you found, obviously there's a lot of different services here. I'm just speaking the finance piece. Does the company have to be at to make sense, right? I don't know if it's a staff level or revenue level. To be like, listen, we need, because we're looking at this bookkeeping, controller, and CFO services. Where should they be at to make sense to work with you?
It's a great question. So everybody needs a finance function. So for us, it's less about whether or not. So if you can have one full-time person, you don't need to go fractional. You can hire somebody yourself. We only provide resources because our clients happen to need a lot of these things. But you can hire somebody yourself. If you need a full-time person usually a controller will show up when a company is 5-6 million. And they can usually get away with it up to 8-10 million, sometimes 12 million. You start seeing the CFOs appear $12 to $15 million dollars, but there's a different reality behind that. So for us, we're a consulting company. So when we go in and help a company, our consulting team comes in, helps them set priorities and figure out what actually needs to be done to grow. The different component is we may not need a CFO until we're 10, 12, $15 million, but we need sprinklings of a CFO potentially now, even at $6, $7, $8 million. So when we build a scope of work for a company, we're asking ourselves, what does this company need for sprinklings of these resources? And our goal is we're pretty boutique. And it's not, the only reason we can get away with it, honestly, is because the marketing, we don't need a marketing engine of our company. We already have a consulting firm. So we have our costs pretty low. So we're a little more boutique than a lot of finance companies. We can do custom engagements, short-term, longer term, and still do well financially as a company. So we'll come in and say, you only need a couple hours a month of a CFO. You need 10, 20 hours of a controller, and you're going to get a higher horsepower engine, sometimes even for less than you pay for one employee. So we're just figuring out what is the sprinkling of the combination of these that you actually need.
That makes sense, because in order to grow, it's like, well, you need to, like you said, someone saying, where do we need to go? But you're maybe not, someone's not at the point where they need a full-time CFO at that point. I love to talk about the growth method, because this is kind of what you've created over decades as an entrepreneur. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. So to your last point about the CFO thing, also, this is going to sound weird. I built the company originally, the finance company, because I've been working with my clients, and our CFOs mostly came from our clients, first of all. So the companies that have exited, et cetera, they'll come back and they'll work with us, because they know what we do, and it's a great thing. It's a great opportunity for us. What's important to understand is I can take a CFO into a company that's $4 or $5 million that may not need a CFO, but only ask the CFO maybe 6 to 10 hours of questions total in a year. But just by getting that 10 hours that I might not have had access to, I can get the company to the next level. So sometimes it's really just having access to super good resources for a short period of time, which you just wouldn't be able to have without actually hiring the resource. And that's what we've tried to build in the finance function. So the growth method, on turning the page on this, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I've been an EO member for 20 years. I've owned, I think, 5 companies, had all kinds of ups and downs. Ultimately, I used to own a student painting company, of all things, a student painting company, which ultimately I sold. We used to teach college students how to run painting businesses for the summer. And it was an entirely system-based company. We'd hire a college kid, and they'd go out there and they'd knock on doors, and they'd hire painters. And we could take the average college kid and get them to do $60,000, $80,000 in business for the summer, have a great resume boost. So I did that for many years before I sold that company, and I think I had 11,000 employees during the time I owned that company. So tremendous experience running lots of people, which is a gift. I became a volunteer in the accelerator program for EO, which is a wonderful thing to do. If any of you are EOers and you have a chance to do that, it's a gift to be able to do that. And then I became an EOS person for many years, which was a great system for us as well. Great. It was a good system for me to learn, and I appreciated my time there. Ultimately, I built my own system because I wanted to not only have a system, I wanted to build a company that was willing to be accountable for the results of the businesses that they work with. And I get why our competitors, almost all of them, don't want to do that, because it's hard. That's saying negative things about them. It's not because it's hard. It's just to lean into being a consulting firm rather than a system company is a challenge. It's a mission-driven thing. But it felt right to myself and my leadership team that we wanted to be accountable for the results of our companies. And so to do that, we built a system that we thought had to link in financial results. So that was the finance portion of our system. We felt like it had to be able to drive alignment from top to bottom in a company. So we switched to OKRs, because although we liked rocks and the methodologies around rocks, we needed something bigger for our scaling companies. And OKRs allowed us to set broader objectives and then set key results across an entire company. And the combination really of OKRs and the finance engine, and then we layered in a strategy piece as well. So for us, when we're working with a company, we got to make sure the strategy is actually scalable, that the financial engine shows it's going to work. And then we use OKRs to operationalize the company. So we built a system that we thought not only is a good system for people to use, whether they're using us or not, but it's easier for us to help companies scale past a certain size. And that's what the growth method does. It's designed to help companies achieve scalable, continuous growth.
So you mentioned the financial results, driving alignment with OKRs and the strategy. What are some mistakes people make when we're talking about alignment in OKRs? And maybe just give a brief explanation of OKRs for people. I think John Doerr wrote a really good book about it.
John Doerr is the father of OKRs. He was it's all started with Google. OKRs are heavily used in the tech space. They're very widely used in larger firms. OKRs are very simply stating, I have an objective that's broad usually. So you might say something like increase gross margin, or increase my customer success function, or improve utilization amongst employees, or improve my go-to-market plan. So it gives you a broad, easy to broadcast lens to use for alignment for employees. So you can say to somebody, you can say to 50 employees, we're trying to increase our gross margins or increase utilization. And they can get that without it being too specific. They get the concept. So objectives allow you to do that. Key results are being more specific. So what that means is that for the senior leadership team, we're going to focus on getting the following things done this quarter and this year. For the departments, we're going to focus on getting these things done this year. But what it allows us to do is by setting a broader objective and then setting what could be hundreds of key results across the company against the broader objective, it allows us to not lose sight of the forest through the trees. And what we found out when we've used Rocks or other systems is it becomes a series of many to-do lists that are being checked. And I'm not checking against a broader nugget that I'm trying to achieve. And what we found is when we go work with a company, there's only 2 or 3 or 4 broad things they need to usually fix ever. So what we try and do is get those things distilled down, make it all simple from an objective standpoint, and then we can set hundreds of key results against those things. But they never lose ground. They never lose sight of what the ultimate end goal is for that objective, which we've defined. So it allowed us to better operationalize things. Now, mistakes that are made. So one of the biggest issues that we've had as a company, us, and that our clients have, is not just with OKRs, but just running the business as a whole. And I was with a big SaaS firm this morning, and we discussed this topic. It's a 200 employee SaaS firm using OKRs. Private equity owned, great company. They said they had the perfect quote. Eric, 20% of our company, the senior leadership, is extremely well aligned. The other 180, I don't know what they're doing. So what happens is they're doing all the work. So senior level team leadership alignment is a big deal. But the beauty of OKRs and the tools that go with it is that they require you to then align the rest of the company. And even in our consulting company, our commercial painting company, these are they're not huge companies. Commercial painting, 12 million. As consulting company, we're about a $6 million company right now. We've hit ceilings on this topic. We have great leadership teams. But what we realized is we're not properly rolling out these objectives to the entire company. And it bit us in the butt this year. And I've actually never seen a company hit a wall as hard as our 3 companies did. And they did. And then it's funny, my team said, Eric, I think it's because we're not eating our own dog food on this stuff. and we're supposed to be doing all this other stuff. And of course, like every other owner, I said, yeah, but there's exceptions. The consulting model is different. And then what I realized is that's just crap, like literally crap. And I got lucky, probably because I'm in the space that knows, this is my expertise. I at least caught myself, and I'm like, even I don't want to listen to me anymore. Like, this is just stupid. So I just said to the team, I'm like, look, and I'm thankful. Our consulting team is a gift to us. They're transparent, they're honest, and they're like, look, we appreciate the candor that you have in our organization, but you need to start telling us what to do. And they're like, we think you have all the tool set because we do it for a living. And we want you to align the departments and put leaders in charge, have full alignment. We put in scorecards, we put in role maps and key accountabilities. We've dropped OKRs to every level of our company. And we already do that for our clients, but even the ones we're not doing it for, we're starting to have a greater awareness that, look, we got to roll this stuff across the entire company. We do a state of the company every quarter. I learned that from EOS. Actually, it was a great tool that I used. But the state of the company, I used to think, okay, well, I'm telling everybody what's going on in the company. Now I realize, no, the state of the company is to broadcast, here are our priorities as a senior level. And here's what we are not doing right now, so don't ask. Here's what the departments need to do, so pay attention. Now go do your meetings and get aligned behind the vision, and also tell me where we get it right and wrong, but go to work. So instead of the state of the company, or this town hall, as people call it, being this like exciting update, it's not that, is what I've known and just learned. It's not an update. It is a directive. It is, here's what we're working on. Here's what we're not working on. If you have questions, let us know. Here's what we need the departments to be working on and not working on. Please fill in the blanks as needed. We trust all of you as leaders, but this is the direction. Unless you have questions about this, this is the direction that is what it is. You have 90 days, go march. And that has been as a person that trains this stuff for a living, I don't know why it took me so long to come to aha about that, but apparently it did. And it's changed everything. So now the company, people don't come to the state of the company. I'm like, you don't have to come to the state of the company if you don't want. Then you're just going to do exactly what we tell you to do and don't ask any questions, because that's when the updates are coming out. And we're going to work extremely hard as a senior leadership team to make sure that's clear. And we're going to tell you what you need to do in that update. And then we're going to ask you to have questions. And it's changed our entire company. So, doing this for 12 years, and apparently it works for everybody, including us.
I'd love to hear, Eric, maybe an example with, it could be CE painting of like an OKR that when you say kind of rolling it out and dropping it to every level. And I just want to say, before you answer that, for me, I can often see things in other people that I am blind to in myself. And once I see it in them, it takes me, maybe I'm a slow learner. I'm like, oh, wait, I'm also doing the exact same thing that I'm seeing them do. But I don't know. For me, it seems sometimes obvious to see it in someone else than myself personally. But how do you, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll answer your question. So we have a couple things on this line. So I'll go with the consulting business first. And it's funny. I've always, for the last 12 months, I've asked myself, I need a me to come in and tell me what to do. But then I realized the reason I don't have a me, because I have a whole team of consultants, all of which I love. The reason I don't have a me is because I'm just a pain in the ass client. Like I would never, I'm horrible. Because my team's like, we'll work with you. I'm like, I'm not working with you. And I realized I'm just such a terrible client. But you're right about the blind spots.
I've seen you in Brendan's dynamic, and I don't know Brendan, but it seems like you may have that dynamic with Brendan, at least watching the webinar.
Yeah, we have a lot of senior leaders in our company, and it's a fun. Once again, it's a gift. So here's an example of an objective that is going to be the theme of our year. So one, alignment across every level of our company is going to be a theme this year. And it's so stupid and basic, but we're using that as clear accountabilities through, we use a tool called a position agreement, which is clarity on everybody in the company having the right job description and key accountabilities. We need to make sure that everybody in our company is in the right seat, which may sound basic, but we're realizing we have a lot of roles that we just don't have defined, that we need to define this year. And by not defining them, it's killing our language. We're rolling out scorecards to our entire company this year, which is difficult, but is proving to be very valuable. But another big one for us is, and this is another aha I had this year, business model. So business model is a weird thing, and we finally came up with ours this year. We've been working on it for years too. And our business model is basically, in any service business, is basically based on we need to get clients that stay with us for a certain period of months, that spend on average a certain amount of dollars, and don't cost more than a certain amount of money to acquire. That's it. So one of the issues that entrepreneurs have is that they don't think about their company from a valuation perspective. Every company has got value. But our whole value, if we ever go to sell our company, but even if we run it efficiently, is based on those three things. So we have turned those three things into objectives that we're focusing on cross-company. And those objectives around increasing number of months per client, that could live for, I'm betting that's going to live for 18 to 24 months at a minimum, because it has to go from our current number to our bigger number. Now, once we figured that out, which took us years to figure that out as a base number and a lot of data, we then put our whole team against that standard, and we looked at it and we said, what does the data show us? And it showed us that we have some people we need to move around in different seats. And it also showed us we have some people that are destroying it. But ultimately, that objective of retaining customers for a certain amount of months, and we're very specific on how long that needs to be, and it populates into our financial model. Our financial business plan is linked to our financial model, for the record. But our ability to create value in our company, and that metric right there is going to link to, I would, without exaggerating, I would say close to 100 key results that we'll set up this year against that objective. That'll be everything from company priorities, client community, better training for consulting team, but it's all linked around that objective of increasing retention for X number of months. We have the same thing for average spend. People say, why do you build all these other companies? Well, one, from a mission standpoint, we do it because we need to provide more services to our clients to make sure we increase their revenue, profit, and valuation. That's the mission of what we do. From a business model standpoint, we also need our average client to spend a certain amount of money, because if we're going to spend a certain amount to acquire that client, we have to get them to spend a certain amount of money to increase our total lifetime value. Now, most companies don't have that kind of business model. And I go in and then I see them spinning out clients, and I go, let's keep getting more clients. And I'm like, you're on a hamster wheel. And that hamster wheel you're on doesn't grow like you think it does. There's stuff that's creating things to shoot out the back. And what can we do to actually prevent that? So these are big topics for us that we're going to have to wrestle with at every level of our company. So we're going to go to our consulting team and have a meeting about this. And there's going to be some things they need to own, to fix, to do better. There's just as many things at a senior level we need to do to also work against this, to do better on our end as well. So the clarity of what that is, though, is really important to us.
Yeah, that's helpful. There's a lot to digest, so I'm gonna have to re-listen to this after it goes live. But I appreciate you going through that, because there's a lot of gems in there. Just how you talked about, the state of the company every quarter, what things you do there. You had some incredible results with Mission. I'd love to have you talk about and walk through what you did there and what happened.
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked that Mission, because I talk about them too much to clients. They get sick of hearing about Mission. But I never talk about them about podcasts or anything else. Nobody ever asks about them. So Mission is one of my earliest clients from many, many years ago. I think maybe 12 years ago at this point. And it started by a guy named Glenn Grant, fellow EO guy, fellow Boston guy, great guy, smart entrepreneur, great tech entrepreneur. Now also a very dear friend. But he hired me as he was an accelerator, and I helped him, worked with him and his team, helped build his team, grow his team. We got the company to about 5-6 million. Then we sold it to a tech company, to a PE company called Great Hill. Great Hill, by the way, if you're looking to have a company acquire you, Great Hill's been a great PE firm for us to work with, great people over there. So they acquired Mission about 7 years ago, and Glenn had a good first exit. But we'd always had a goal to sell to a PE firm that would help take the company to the next level, next size. And they kept me around. And we took 3 companies, and that one, there was a roll up of 3 purchases. And they kept me around to smash these companies together, help get them all on the same page, and work with the new leadership team at Mission, which I did. Mission then became, it used to be G2, then it became Mission. And Mission grew up to about, I won't go too in the details, but 80 and 100 million. And we sold them after about 7 years. They were a phenomenal student. So it's interesting if you look at Mission, they're in the right space, certainly. They're a premier AWS.
What does Mission do? What did they do?
The cloud service is AWS. They're an AWS partner, and their whole metric is around AWS and cloud and everything to do with AWS and cloud. I don't want to pigeonhole them, because if it's AWS and cloud and anything to do with small business, even enterprise at this point, they're gonna help you with that, get you in the cloud, keep you in the cloud, all that kind of stuff. So it's the right space, but they're just a good student. They eat their broccoli. They do the planning. They do it across all levels of the company. They do the state of the company. They do OKRs at every level of the business. And then ultimately they got purchased by CDW, and CDW is a Fortune 200 company. We just kicked off annual planning with CDW in Park City last month. Now Mission is part of this, billions of dollars company, and Mission will be the biggest part of their AI and dev arm of the company, and a lot of that was because we were bought. I was really proud of the fact that we didn't know what was going to happen. We got bought. We got bought for a big number. For us, wasn't much for CDW. It was a big number for the company. It was a big number. And when you sell your company and they bought the whole thing, you never know what's going to happen. But CDW basically said, "You guys just run it as you've been running it, at least for the first year, and we'll see how that goes." And I was proud of the fact that we did a planning session with them. Wonderful people over there, and we said, "What do you think we should be doing differently?" And they said, "Nothing. You should just be doing exactly what you're doing, and we'll help you finance the 3-year plan, and just keep doing exactly what you're doing." But that is an example of a company that's aligned from top to bottom, that has made many difficult decisions, and they just eat their broccoli. They're in the right space. They have a good strategy. All those things are super important. They have a great financial arm. All those things we care about, and they're great people. But that's an example of what you can do. We have a lot of stories like that. But that's a really big one.
I think, Eric, they started off maybe a little bit over $500,000 and then grew to, like you were saying, to 80 to 100 million. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then they sold for a much bigger number than that. So it's incredible. Yeah. It's a great story. And it was difficult. And now I'm working with Mission and the new version of Mission, which is now part of CDW. But ultimately, we do the same boring stuff. We meet every 90 days. We set priorities. Our team helps to align the whole organization from top to bottom. They work very hard. And we keep questioning the strategy to make sure it's the right one. And we stick to the basics. And it's funny, people think, well, you run a $100 million company, things are different. No, things are just worse. Things are actually simpler in grander magnification. So it's kind of this the only difference is that what was once a problem of a 5% gross margin issue that cost us, $500,000 a year, now costs us $50 million in a year. That's the difference. But it's the same problem. And the problem is when companies grow, they're like, oh, it's so much more complex. No, it's not. It's not more complex. We need to make sure we have the right people in the right seats that are following the right stuff, and they need to be showing up to work 40 hours a week. That's really it. And when you trick yourself into something's different, when your company grows, that's when you get stuck in bloat and inefficiency and everything else. And I'm proud of Mission because it's never done that. So it's not been easy, but it's been fun.
Talk about eating broccoli for a second. You mentioned a couple things about, doing the state of the company, right people in right seats. What are some other things that you consider that they did that you would consider, making sure they just always ate their broccoli?
Yeah, so one, and people ask me what we really do for a living, it's figure out what vegetable to eat and make sure people eat it. That's really what we do. And that is what we're really good at. We're good at people saying, what should I be doing? Well, we can work with you to help you figure that out. We can try and use external resources to figure that out. But ultimately, we can figure out which vegetable to eat. And then we're pretty good at making you say, you got to eat it, or we need to be having a different conversation. So in their case, they did a lot of stuff. They leaned in on a lot of things which were really exceptional that they did routinely. They certainly did quarterly meetings every quarter, no matter what. They did something very interesting. We have always done team trust. Once again, part of my hangover from EOS. We've always done team trust exercises at a high level, but Mission has done these team trust exercises for 12 years straight on an annual basis. And in some years, we've missed them because we've had so many hard topics going on. But they've always committed to, we must always talk openly and honestly, even when it's extremely painfully difficult. And they're always relying on me to step in where I can to make sure that continues to happen. And it is never, it's funny, they're the same humans that have been there for 7 years with some changes. The conversations have never gotten easier. We just keep forcing ourselves to have them. People don't change. It's just the same people that are just getting better at talking. So they do a lot of that. They do a lot of analyzing the strategy on an annual basis to make sure it's the right strategy, it's actually working, and they test it. We've had to do heavy cost cutting, very unpopular, but we've had to do cost cutting in times when it was required, when it was miserable and almost counterproductive, but the model wouldn't have worked otherwise. And we sometimes weathered the storm, but sometimes we just couldn't afford it. And we made tough decisions. We also made key hires in that company that were risky. And they're risky for big companies too, because they're trying to, hit their numbers. We made some key hires that took some convincing of the leadership team. And those key hires made a huge difference. So
what would be an example of like a position that's risky that was a key hire?
Well, I'll give him credit in case you ever listen to this thing. They hired Glenn Beck, who was the original founder, and put him in a service delivery capacity. And Glenn is he's a great tech leader. Like I always call him the angry hoodie guy because that's what he is, and I love him. We're big Star Wars fans together. But the company just needed some more alignment. The tech leadership team, the whole tech team's awesome. Like the tech team over there, and there's a couple hundred of them. I've met a lot of them. They're amazing people. But they needed somebody as a tech leader who was kind of tech-y, who got it, and who can hold them, help them hold themselves more accountable to productivity. Glenn comes in, he'd been gone, he'd exited, they brought him back. It was a risky hire, tough to bring a founder back, but he took that thing seriously, drove it to success. I don't know how many points he's picked up in margin, but it's probably 3 to 5 million in 1 year at minimum net. He's picked up in off the gross margin, simply because he's just like, look, I may not be able to run hundreds of millions of dollars in a company, but I can tell you what a service delivery team needs to look like. And he nailed it. So that's an example of a hire that was needle moving. Not ridiculously expensive, by the way. Glenn's not cheap as a resource for certain, but it was a resource that was the best bang for the buck. And I mean, he made a big difference. Mission's had other key hires like that as well. But those are risky hires that you're just like, they've also done a lot of heavy investment in selling and marketing. You could look at it and say, well, they should cut back in sales and marketing. Mission doesn't do that. Everybody cuts sales and marketing when things are tough. They have not. And they built some tremendous conferences and everything else because they did not cut that budget. So very difficult decisions, but they did a good job of it.
Eric, I know we have a few minutes left, and I'd love to hear some of your mentors throughout in your business journey that have helped you. I do want to just point people to check out cruisingco.com. We've pulled it up. Actually, they have some great webinars there. You touched on one of the eat your broccoli things, situations with the you have a difficult conversations webinar, which is great. You talk in there about Speed to Candor. So I would encourage anyone to check out that resource on their page. But I'd love to hear mentors throughout the years.
So I'll tell you, I have a couple of those. I will say on the speed to candor thing, I get the question a lot in these, what kills the company? I can tell you what kills the company and what prevents company from growing more than anything else is lack of trust. And that sounds weird because I even have high trust companies where my answer is always the same. This happened to me recently. I sat in a leadership team of a fast growth company and as a super valuable executive there. And at the end I said, how'd it go? And he said, it went great. And I asked him later, I said, how do you think it went? And he's like, it went great, but we got to focus on X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, next time in the room, please. That was incredibly valuable what you just said. Even if you piss off the entire room, just say it because we may lose time because you didn't say that. So that speed to being able to say things without worrying about what everybody else is going to think, even if you're wrong, is often the biggest difference I see in companies that scale and those that don't. So just a comment on that.
Thank you.
I gotta always give credit. He's probably sick of hearing it because I know he's heard some of these, but I gotta give credit to Mark Moses, CEO coaching. I'm very close to Mark. I was Mark's third client. And he's also from the student painting industry. But Mark is a great coach. He was a coach to me for almost 6 years. He rings in my ears all the time. If you ever want to, we have clients that we'll send to him sometimes that need coaching in certain areas. And I'll always tell him, like, if you want to know what Mark's going to tell you any topic, I can pretty much tell you. But he taught me the basics. Mark was a funny guy and still is this way because he's like literally one of the smartest dumb guys that I know. And he would know what that means. Like sometimes you look at him, he's like a caveman. Like he says things that are just like so stupidly basic. And I'm just like, Mark, there's more context to my question. He's like, Eric, the context is not necessary. The answer is this. And you know that. That's what he'll say. And what I've learned is, as people, we talk ourselves into so much context around topics because we don't have to deal with things or we don't have an answer. And what Mark is really good at is, he'll say, Eric, I don't know the solution. I just know what you're doing is wrong. So we have to figure out from here to get from here to here. And that I catch myself all the time because he rings in my ear. There are certainly others, though. There are EOers, honestly, that I've met that I'm extremely, that I love, honestly, a great deal. If I think some specifically, I can't remember his name right now. Oh, the Priceline guy. I can't remember his name.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, Hoffman.
Yeah, Jeff Hoffman.
So Wayne I think it's Wayne Hoffman was his name, not Reed, although Reed's good too.
No, Jeff Hoffman?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Jeff. That guy's phenomenal. He's phenomenal. He's a phenomenal human, and he's a phenomenal business leader, and he's the most understated person you could ever meet. You'd think he was worth like, $1 million if you talk to him, maybe, and you start talking and you realize, man, this guy is sharp. So Jeff Hoffman's super smart. Admire that guy. Rick Sapio, unfortunately, just passed. Wonderful guy, wonderful leader, wonderful mentor, extremely intelligent guy to listen to. I'm a big believer, by the way, in EMP. If you have any EOers on here who have done EMP or not.
My business partner, John Corcoran, is going through it now.
Yeah, so I graduated EMP. Now I'm in return to masterminds. I've done that for 10 years now. I think maybe even 11 years straight. So a lot of people that speak to us inside that circle, I'm very passionate about. I give big props to Vern, honestly. Vern is he's had his hiccups along the way, and scaling up and traction, all the systems crap that we all come up with. That guy's freaking smart. Like, he's smart, and I've learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from Gino, honestly, Gino Wickman. Interestingly, I learned a lot from Gino talking to him directly. More so than I ever did as an implementer, like talking to him directly. He had great quote, 2 phenomenal Gino quotes. I give him 100% credit for it. I'll give one to Vern too. Phenomenal Gino quote number 1. That's not in any of his books. He says, if you keep anybody on your team, if you keep 5% of your team that's in the wrong seats, 5 to 10% of people in the wrong seats, you've eaten up all of your profit, period, and at least all of the money you would have ever had to have any growth of any kind to invest in your company. He says, so even keeping the extra 5 or 10% of fat, he says, which almost all companies do because they don't want to deal with that extra 5 or 10%, it eats up their entire ability to invest in their company permanently. That was the number one thing he said. Second thing he said, which I've never forgotten, is in that case, in the EOS case, we believe this in our system. He said the value of EOS is not, it's in the leadership team, but 90% of the value is in all levels below the leadership team. And I believe wholeheartedly in that. So those are 2 nuggets from him. From Vern, the biggest aha I got was, he said, so eye-opening for me. He said the definition of a senior leader is somebody who does not need to be managed. I've never forgotten that. And by definition, what he's saying is, if the person is truly a senior leader, you shouldn't have to manage them. And then also by definition, everybody else does need to be managed in some way, shape, fashion, or form. And then he also said that. He went on to then say, every goal you set with everybody else needs a follow-up loop. Any goal that does not have a follow-up loop of some kind, you can expect it won't get done. So that really helped summarize to me the whole difference between micromanagement and just management, was that quote, and further conversations with Vern. So I've been blessed to be surrounded by lots of people that are good mentors, and I tried to listen to them as much as I possibly could and share it with as many people as I can.
Eric, I know you have to hop on another meeting, but this has been incredibly insightful and valuable. I encourage everyone to check out cruiseandco.com to learn more. We'll see everyone next time. Eric, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.